Sure that you like, share, and subscribe for more Pop of Genius
up
on
a pathway where the government started to intervene in the black family. And we're going to discuss it. See, this is where just Pearly, in this case study of her, this is a lesson to us smart black women on why we are in the current state of this infighting, cultural infighting. The development of the manosphere, the red pill. Why is there so much hostility between and division between black men and black women here in the United States? And again, this is the reason on why I said that black women, smart black women, now we're going to learn why. We're going to solve the problem together. And when 1967 law passed of Loving versus Virginia, that began to change things very rapidly. There's a sister on here on social media, and she said something very profound not too long ago. And she said that black men, the only reason why you were able to marry white women, it is because the white man decided that he wanted to make it legal to marry the black woman. When he decided that he wanted to make it into law to where he wanted to marry the black woman, he wanted to give his belongings to the black woman, that is when it opened up a pathway for you to now marry white women. Prior to that, you would have not had that right to do that. You could do it in ceremony, but it was not legally recognized until 1967.
You should be thanking black women for the fact that you can marry a white woman. I said, so even when you don't think we made your life better, we did. And he was like, nah, I know what you, I said, if it was not for, and that's damn near everything in America, if it was not for that white man wanting it, you would not have it. That white man wanted to marry a black woman. That's the only reason interracial marriage is legal. That white man wanted to live his gay life out loud. That's the only reason you got LGBTQ rights. But we missed that thinking, oh, you think you did something? Because we was fighting for equal rights. Because we paid taxes.
Yeah.
We was.
You want to know what else changed? A lot of intermarriages that happen between white men and Asian women. So there's a whole nother facet to this red pill manosphere. There's a whole facet to this. It's so many other factors that go into this. White men also started to intermarry even more with Asian women. And you know, when John Lennon and Yoko Ono got married, it really was something that trended in a positive way. And so that really turned on a lot of American men. Even before that, like even during the war between Japan and America, the Korean War, there's different types of wars that were taking place in Asia. But when Vietnam happened, the Vietnam War, my dad he's a veteran of the Vietnam War. He was a Purple Heart. And the Vietnam really exacerbated the relations that occurred between white men and Asian women, also between black men and Asian women. So they started to bring Asian women here to the United States. The New York Times did an entire article on it, and it was a great piece, and it featured many pictures of different families. This is one in particular, and there was actually something that it was actually a movement that was titled the War Bride, where American soldiers would transport wives from Asian countries and bring them over to America, and they were able to get their paperwork and they became full American citizens. White American women had to compete for marrying white men, because remember, white American men, they are the patriarch. They are the ones that are the dominant in American society. Also, they have a lot more of the decision-making powers and control of the money. And so that created a new competition. Now, 1967, black women were now legalized to marry white men, and now you had Asian women coming in marrying white men. And this started to escalate something else. This started to escalate the push for black women and black men to be separated. How? A lot of this occurred by white social workers, white female social workers that would go into black households, primarily in the North. They would harass black women, especially, from allowing black women to have their black male husbands or male partners to reside in the home if black women were receiving social services like welfare, food stamps, tax paid social services in their homes. What they would do is they would stress these black women out and make them think that they're jeopardizing something that they applied for and were approved for if they did not make the black men and black partners leave from these homes. Now, that was going to eliminate a male representation in the lives of those black children in that home. Movies came out about this. 1970s for black Americans was one of the last decades where black people were primarily marrying each other, or they were creating non-traditional family households with each other. I'm a 1978 baby, and my parents were married. Again, they married until my dad died. Most of my black friends in the neighborhoods that I grew up in were married. If they weren't married, maybe they were divorced, but black people still married each other. It wasn't until 1980s and the war on drugs started. My era right here. This is where I grew up as a child in New York. I'm a New York kid. You know, I lived between the boroughs and on Long Island. So I saw effects happen across the board with crack cocaine and crime. And, you know, this, you want to know who pushed it? You want to know who infiltrated the drugs in our community? Yeah, them right there. President Reagan, Ronald Reagan, and Nancy Reagan. Isn't that something? Like, I grew up with the DARE police. Okay, the DARE police and the Say No to Drugs and these campaigns that came out around 10 o'clock at night. This is your brain on drugs. They would have different videos and commercials that were spread to help to tell little black kids, especially, and little Hispanic children, to say no to drugs. Why? Because it was infiltrated in our community the most. This is where our black men and Hispanic men started to get arrested. This is where not only was the Spanish Harlem, like black people trying to help Hispanic people get civil rights in Harlem, in New York, coming over here after civil rights had already been passed, but they were still experiencing discriminatory practices, especially in housing. Well, not only did that started to make black and Latino, this black and brown coalition happen, but so did the war on drugs. And also, this is what formed hip hop, because you had black men who were in leadership that were not saying anything about it, or it seemed like they were patting their pockets with a lot of Republican money. Okay, this is when Republicans all of a sudden started to become friendly with the black community. Now, that's why I can never respect people like Anton Daniels, because Anton Daniels is like the Clarence Thomas of social media. He benefited from being in the black community. He knows the struggle. And yet, as soon as he came across Republican white dollars, he sells out. That's why he makes those videos. That's why every time he make a video about something happening in the black community, he can only see it through the eyes of a Republican white man. That was the start of the epidemic that seemed like it still has not even ended, even here in 2025. They started to ask the question, why were so many black men in prison during the 1980s? This is when the prison to pipeline started for many young black boys. They were reducing the amount of funding that they were sending to predominantly black neighborhoods, and the likeliness of a young black boy that did not make it past third grade, or if he started to decline in education at the third grade, it would more likely determine that he would also end up in prison when he got to an age where he could be held as an adult.
78% of black husbands were in their homes, married to the mother of their children, when they started the social engineering of the welfare state. Fast forward 50 years, 78% of black children are being raised in single-headed households. This is destruction.
Why doesn't Timothy help you take care of those kids?
One thing I do know about Timothy, that if he did have a job, see you another blue moon, I know he would take care of me and the children and the bills.
Now remember, we just discussed that the Supreme Court struck down the unfair practice of white social workers, welfare agencies, and social programs that were there to help poverty and impoverished families of America, to help them to get financially stable enough to help take care of their families, right? But you know what happened? Those agencies, again, that were mostly led by white women that went out as social workers to evaluate homes, they created a new policy, and it was called unauthorized residence. Still trying to keep black men out of the homes of black women. And that required for you to report all changes in the household composition. And if a non-registered man stayed too often, it could be treated as an unauthorized change into your family's, their determination on your family staying on these social programs. And because they don't want to jeopardize their children's ability to be able to eat, have heating, and have a stable home, they were really forced to ask their black husbands or black male partners, a male presence in the home, to leave. That's where you started seeing the propaganda everywhere of it being advertised that black women saying that I don't need a black man. It wasn't that we didn't need a black man. It's that we didn't need for the black man to be in the home jeopardizing our children's ability to eat. Because these black men were coming home, unfortunately, from being incarcerated. That means that it lessened their chances of being able to get a really good paying job. Capitalism started to be heavily driven. So they were being outpriced for rent. They definitely were not really being approved for homes in many of these inner city poor areas. A lot of them were facing mental health issues now because they were coming back from Vietnam. There were so many different factors that were building up against the black man. And then he was also being deemed as someone who was no good. He was being labeled as a problem to society around this time. If you watch part 1 to my video of this series, you'll see in there where Tommy Sotomayor angrily discussed how he had this grudge against his mother and the aunties that he grew up with because he didn't have a father in the home. Now, if he grew up here in the United States, he should do his research on his own history. And he'll know that a lot of this was due to economic issues that were out of the control of his mother and aunties. He feels a grudge that they made him and other guys in his household go out and sell drugs, make money for the women in the house, and that women, especially Black American women or Black women, put this responsibility on Black young men in their households and communities because there's a lack of a husband or a male partner in their neighborhoods and in their homes. If he does his research, then he'll know why that impacted Black American communities in such a way. But Black men are not, they're not blameless in a lot of this, because within all of this that was going on, a lot of them started to run away from the pressures. This is one conversation that was recorded.
Does it make you feel bad that you can't support your kids?
Yes.
How do they make it? Where do they get the money?
Well, the majority of them, the mothers on welfare, and welfare gives them the stipend for the month. So what I'm not doing, the government does.
What would happen if the government didn't?
This would be a big disaster, I guess, because you can't give something that you don't have. In order to give, you got to have for yourself.
You see, people out there watching will say, why didn't he think about that before he brought 6 kids into the world?
Well, mother had a choice. She could have had an abortion, or she could have kept the child. She decided whether she wanted to have the child, so therefore, I guess it's not sweating her. I mean, it's not bothering.
You think it's her fault if she gets pregnant?
Well,
I mean, you fought her.
Well, maybe not. Like they say, mama, baby, papa,
Right
baby.
around this time is when interracial relationships started to really increase. And it wasn't increasing anymore with the white man and the Black woman, or the white man and the Asian woman. No, it started to increase with, guess who was out there who didn't have a home? Now he's out there in the streets. Now he's out there selling drugs. Now he's out there having to create a different life for himself because he had to leave the one that he was always used to. The Black man is out here, no wife, no access anymore to his home. Now there's starting to become tension between the Black man and the Black woman. Can't really see his children. And then also, he started to become more criminally inclined. Not all Black men, but this subgroup of Black men started to get into selling drugs because he came back home. He was either suffering from mental health or he was suffering from discrimination. And also around that time is when the economy started to see a downward shift after the Vietnam War. More white men were educated, less Black men. Black men were enrolling less into schools at that time. There's a lot of discrimination that was starting to take place yet again. Now, isn't this interesting? All of these years with all of these white social workers that were going in and out of these Black women's homes, unannounced appointments, sabotaging their relationships, making Black women feel like they were immoral, that they were loose, that they were not worthy of social programs to help support their family, while at the same time maintaining a marriage or a relationship. But these same white female social workers, they also later on became, or their daughters became, social workers within the criminal justice system. They served as counselors for inmates in prisons. Also, they worked as police officers or other staff support members within the Department of Criminal Justice. They also served as parole and probation officers. These women, they would be in close proximity to black men, and they would have to help them with placement with housing, jobs, and also mental health services. Out of before 1964, because remember, Emmett Till, for a black man to even whistle at a white woman, that could cause you to be lynched here in this country. And the other reason is because a lot of black men who got into the crime, especially after Vietnam, started to get into pimping, drug selling, gang violence, gang organization. These young white girls would rebel against their parents and their families. They would run away from home, and a lot of times they were running into very high crime inner city communities and neighborhoods where they would get pimped out by these guys. They would get into a life of crime, get on drugs. This is right on that same time in the 80s where a high number of interracial relationships between white women and black men started to increase. And also too, with that, black biracial children were really starting to be birthed in this era. And now you're starting to see the climb of the black man and white woman relationship increase in rates from the 1980s, the 90s, 2010, and then moving forward to today. Hey, that's a great thing. I think that in the beginning, when this was becoming popular, it did throw some black women off where they felt like, hey, we have always had it really hard. We're just getting certain rights. You know what I'm saying? So, and then now we're getting access to earn more money. And now, black men, you want to leave at this time to be with another race. But now, here in 2025, we don't care. But unfortunately, when these numbers started to increase from the 80s, 90s, 2010, and moving forward, you had two groups of people that had never solved their issues of black men being put out of their homes and communities from that man out the house rule, man in the house rule. Okay, those men either died off or they passed on their trauma to their sons and grandsons. Same behaviors were continuing on. 3-strike rule had been created, and unfortunately, a lot of black men were in higher numbers with incarceration versus college education. One of the pathways to success in financial freedom came through athletics and music. However, that still didn't dismiss them from being victims of discrimination. Also, you've got other issues that went into play on reason why black men still had like this anger against black women. And that is because from 1970 moving forward, black women started to become the heads of the household. And that added fuel to the fire. Now you have today all of these red pill manosphere, all of this hate and contention between especially black men towards black women. Do you know that's inherited? That's inherited trauma from all the way from the 60s, after 60s and the 70s, after civil rights was passed. That is trauma. So when you see individuals like just Pearly helping to, as a white woman, she helped to fan those flames. She became like queen of this manosphere talk, this red pill talk, this this unhealthy dialogue coming especially from black men towards black women, to where they internalize this now. And now there are more marriages, or black men will be more likely to marry outside of his race than black women. However, there are the highest rates of domestic violence, and intimate domestic violence comes from black men against black women. And if you don't know, just Pearl, she was inspired by Kevin Samuels' material. She was inspired that he would get on social media, and everybody knows that the majority of his material that made him a success in his audience and his fan base eyes is that he talked down to black women. He degraded black women. He made black men think that they were superior to black women based on the amount of money that they could achieve. And then they can turn around and grade black women based on a number system, on their appearance, their education, whether they were a virgin or not, their virginity, if they have their body shape and their size of their dress, and also too what he would call a quote unquote body count, how many intimate partners she's had in the past that she was willing to come forth with you in the beginning of a relationship. And this somehow makes you an alpha male and not a beta male. Beta male means a man that will just accept anything, and he has no leadership, no control. He has no authority within his relationship in the eyes of his woman and society. All of this negative stuff that Kevin Samuels also inherited, because he too had a considerable amount of child support that was due from 2 failed marriages. He also did not finish college. And before he died, he was able to pay off over $200,000 worth of child support. That's how far in deep he was in from not being able to provide for his children. He comes from that lineage of no man in the house, because no real man allows his kids to go without, especially at that considerable amount of money in this day and time. That is crazy. But this is what Just Pearly got turned on to. It excited her to hear black men talking negatively about black women. And so what she did was she took that and she crafted it into her own, to create her own space within the Manosphere Red Pill podcast genre. And she started to include white women into it as well. White podcast contributors in it as well. But see, all along she was using these black guys. The first thing she did was she got with this joker right here. He is Pookalicious. A Pookylicious, okay? He had his own fan base, and she knew that. She didn't have the base that she needed, so she decided to go with this guy, moved him into her house. I think he's Nigerian American. Her family took care of him. Her wealthy, rich, white mom and dad moved him into their Chicago home and took care of this joker, lived on these people, and then he even was fool enough to propose marriage to her in front of his fan base on live social media, where she declined him. Once she got what she needed from him, and that was clout, she dumped him like a hot potato, okay? She dropped him like a hot potato. He's on some other white man's podcast now crying about her and about his other ex that has also dumped him. And this is what she do. This is where smart black women, we can learn how to navigate just like she was able to navigate. We can navigate ourselves back into restoring, being a part, not the lead, but a part of helping to restore our black community. Not for us to necessarily procreate or get married to each other. Because if you watch my first If you watch my first part to this series, you'll see that I say that black men need black women to be successful. And we need each other. We do well with each other when we organize with each other. Great things happen. The world changes when black men and black women on positive wavelength, and we are respectful of each other. We are able to accomplish a lot. And you know who else knows that? Individuals like Just Pearly and her white male patriarch power structure that do not want to see black people do well. This is how, as intelligent black women, we can look at all of this that has occurred through history and where we're at now. Now, of course, I left out a lot of things. I even left out the fact that white women also
Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe.